Greetings everyone. I hope you're well and having an excellent day. Welcome back to the second video of the channel, Are We Civilized? This video is entitled, How Did I Get Here? So I'm going to revamp the first video by reading the document that I made for that video and to refresh our memories, asking the question, are we civilized? We have no choice about our birth. We have no choice about death. Birth and death are inevitable for humans and their creation. What choices we make between birth and death? What will we leave behind for the next generation of humanity? How will we choose to live our life? In 1975, while attending my first job, I would learn the golden rule: do to others as you would have them do to you. 12 years later, I would learn a different version of the golden rule: the person with the gold makes the rules. 47 years of public service sucked the life out of me. At the age of 52, I walked away. I could no longer do the mental gymnastics required to balance work, personal, and sleep. I became a burned out and hedonic misanthrope. The American society I helped grow has retired me. Along the way, I regularly asked myself, how did I get here? I spent 63% of my life working with electronic equipment and observing human behaviors through customer service opportunities. I applied the same critical thinking skills used to maintain and repair equipment to understanding human behaviors. Equipment is manufactured with operator and service manuals. The manuals cover how to install, use, maintain, troubleshoot, and repair the equipment. Rational thought processes and analytical thinking are what brought the equipment into existence. We call this technology. People, on the other hand, are not created with operator and service manuals. In general, people are not created with rational analytical thinking. People are created by emotion and the innate physiological need for procreation of our species. We call this humanity. At the age of 54, I started asking myself, why are we here? What are we doing? What's the point of human existence? Ultimately, nobody knows the answer to these questions. I finally came to the conclusion that life is a learning experiment in human evolution. Life's meaning is to evolve from an animal into a civilized human being. The question is, are we civilized? So the purpose of this YouTube channel is to examine the human condition using critical thinking skills. The hope of this channel is to create a not-for-profit organization known as a Foundation for a Civilized Nation. The goal of this channel is to improve the human condition for everyone, not just the wealthy person making the rules of our society. Fair enough? So, today is February 6th, 2025. At this recording time, 35 years ago, I joined the United States Coast Guard. I spent 6 months of research and 2 visits to the recruiter. So initially I went into the recruiter. I just wanted to see what they had to say, what type of careers they offered. The family I grew up with the males in the family are all combat veterans. Survival of the bombing at Pearl Harbor, so they fought through World War II, they served through Korea and Vietnam. So I thought, given the situation that I was in at the age of 19, looking at how much money I earned, the type of life that I wanted, that type of thing, it made sense to go into the military, do 20 years as family members had done, and retire at the age of 39. So I chose a different route. Instead of choosing a military that trains to kill people to earn a living, I chose a military that chooses to save people's lives to earn their living. So anyway, going to the recruiter, talking with them the first time, seeing what they had to offer, and then going back to my job, doing the things that I was doing. It took me 6 months later, I went back. I sat down, I took the ASVAB test, and looked at what careers would be available for me. So, what was good about this, everything sounded too good to be true. Do 20 years, 39 years old, and retire with 50% of the base pay. That's what I was told I would get. That was the only inaccuracy the recruiter stated to me. In that particular year, 1990, you joined, I don't know what year it was, you joined after that specific year, the member only received 40% of their base pay. Not a big deal. I learned that after I'd been in the Coast Guard for 4 years. So, objective testing, that was the most important part. The ASVAB test is the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. And then how I would earn my way up the ranks would be through service-wide exams. And so February 6th came around and I left Omaha, Nebraska in a taxi cab to get to the airport, the MEP Center. I left the MEP Center in a taxi cab to get to the airport, and from the airport I flew to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania I would get on a bus and go to Cape May, New Jersey. So I still have the certificate that states United States Coast Guard, to all shall see these presents, greetings. Be it known that Donovan Keith Ahrens has successfully met the required high standards for enlistment and has been accepted as a member of the United States Coast Guard, the nation's oldest continuous seagoing service dedicated to the preservation of life and property, and by having accepted membership in this elite organization is charged with carrying forth the proud tradition of service to country and humanity upon which the great Coast Guard is founded. So, given under my hand, Coast Guard Recruiting Office, Omaha, Nebraska, 6th day of February 1990, by Martin D. Gonzalez, Bosun's Mate Chief. I didn't need to read this. I still remember Bosun's Mate Chief Martin Gonzalez and going to the recruiting center, doing all that. So before leaving the recruiting center, the MEP Center, officers enlisted are take a sworn oath to defend the United States Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic, and they're bound by the UCMJ, which is the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So the officers and the enlisted work by the same rules. Coast Guard's a federal law enforcement agency. And so when I left and made my way to Cape May, there was approximately 70 of us recruits that day that showed up from all over the United States. And they didn't want that many recruits in one company, so they divided our companies. I went through with X-Ray. Whiskey was the sister company. I was in X-Ray 132. I happened to graduate first in my company amongst all the other, approximately 30, I think there was approximately 32, 35 of us when we started. And the 8th week, recruits started coming up to me asking me where I was going. I didn't understand what they were saying. They had to tell me, well, you finished first, you'll have the first pick of any of the open billets. I had no idea. I didn't know that boot camp was a competition. To me, it was just follow the rules, do the job, and not have any problems. It made sense to me. These things were logical. As long as, in good faith, no one was lying to me, this was a good career, and it made a lot of sense. So, like it says here, I was promoted 6 times in 8 years, and here's the paperwork that I have from my service-wide exam. Congratulations on passing the ET1 exam. Profile below lists the sections, references, blah, 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 all that good stuff. The final multiple points, which will determine your placement of the eligibility list for ET1 are so and such and such and such. Your standing, let's see, I wrote number 11 out of 106. So out of 176 competitors, I wrote number 11 on the test. And after all the factors were put in, I finished 22 and the cutoff was 26. So I came to work, I did my job, and I was promoted. These colorful ribbons that folks see in movies and the like on military uniforms aren't just there to make their uniforms look pretty. These are ribbons and medals that are earned by the individual as well as the unit as a team. So my DD-214 outlines these ribbons, and I'll go ahead and read from them. So, Commandant's Letter of Commendation Ribbon, Secretary's Outstanding Unit Award, Coast Guard Unit Commendation, Coast Guard Meritorious Unit Commendation with Gold Star, Coast Guard Bicentennial Unit Commendation. Second, Coast Guard Good Conduct Award. Good Conduct Award is given for every 3 years. Just follow the rules, do your job, and you won't have any problems. So let's see, National Defense Service Medal. And then we move down to Coast Guard Arctic Service Medal, Humanitarian Service Medal, Coast Guard Special Operations Service Ribbon, Coast Guard Sea Service Ribbon, Coast Guard Restricted Duty Ribbon, Coast Guard Expert Rifle Medal, Coast Guard Pistol Marksmanship Ribbon. So these are the colorful awards that I earned along my 8-year career. Also those ribbons and medals are backed up by unit commendations, paperwork, administrative marks, that type of thing. And the reason that I'm showing all of this is a comparison and a contrast of these two employers. Like I said earlier, I spent 63% of my life working with electronics equipment, and how I ended up becoming a burned out anhedonic misanthrope. I made one critical error in my Coast Guard career. Now, on the 8th week of boot camp, as we're waiting to out-process for our new units, that type of thing, QM1 Hughes, so Quartermaster First Class Hughes, she sat down with her company and she gave out some advice. 2 pieces of advice that I remember that she handed out. The first one being, when you show up to your new unit, that the first person who introduced themselves to you and wants to become friends with you, type of thing, is generally a person who's worn out their welcome with everybody else at the command. Their dubious nature, I guess. And the other piece of advice that she gave out was, if the Coast Guard wanted you to have a spouse, they would issue you one in your sea bag. That was where I failed. I ended up getting married, and it was a 4-year nightmare. And it takes 2 to tango, and there's 2 sides to the story. And so in the end, I was this person's 3rd husband, and ultimately she was married 6 times. So I looked at myself over that period of time, that 4-year nightmare, trying to figure out what I was doing wrong, because what I learned from that marriage was complete backwards thinking. That somebody could consistently accuse me of cheating on them when I wasn't doing that didn't make any sense to me. And I had to have someone explain to me, most likely the reason that she is accusing you of this is because she is cheating on you, and she's getting away with it, and she thinks you're doing the same thing. At 20, from the age of 23 through the age of 28, I had no concept of this backwards thinking. So it was quite the learning experience. And I'll get to that at another time. So anyway, as the same way that I entered the Coast Guard, there's a saying that I didn't know back then at the age of 19. I wouldn't learn the saying until I was in my 40s. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. Today is a gift. It's why it's called the present. And so what I was doing was looking at my present, the gift. I was looking at my history in order to predict my future. And it's been quite a difficult learning experience, an arduous journey getting to this point in my life. And this backwards thinking person was how I found this job. She found the job and it would have suited her mentality perfectly, does not suit mine. So the next part of the video, we'll go ahead and we'll put up the city of Corvallis and their completely 180-degree backwards way of objective testing. This is more about who's friends with who's family members, who goes to church together. That's how people get employed there. So next up, we'll move here, and then finally I'll close out the video with the understanding of burnout, anhedonic, and misanthrope. So let me get the information put up here and we'll check back in. With this side of the board filled out now, we can start comparing and contrasting one employer to the other. Like I said earlier, I ran into some issues here and I needed to reevaluate whether I wanted to stay employed here or look for another employer. It's fair enough. I did this every time an enlistment came up in the Coast Guard. I looked where I was in my career, looked what was happening in the Coast Guard, and as well as my personal life, seeing what avenue I should take for the future. So on March 4th, 1998, I interviewed with the city of Corvallis in the same good faith that I interviewed with the United States Coast Guard, accepted the position there, did the 4-year enlistment. I was not able to make the first round of interviews because I was in Kodiak, Alaska. I was not willing to pay the flight fees, that type of thing, travel costs to interview for a job where I had no idea whether or not I would, earn the position. So I had a friend in the Coast Guard whose family worked with Alaska Airlines, and then I was able to work through Alaskan Airlines with him, travel with him to Seattle, rent a car, drive to Corvallis, Oregon, and interview on Wednesday, March 4th, 1998. So the formal interview process was with a fella named Steve Rogers, then Mary Steckel, Jim Mitchell, Clancy Clark, and Julie Ward. And when I went through that interviewing process with them, it was all about customer service and teamwork. I still have all the questions that I was asked during that interviewing process, and it was such a pointed towards customer service and teamwork that I felt confident that I was going to be continuing the same line of employment with the Coast Guard as a public servant, benefiting the community, that type of thing. And then the next part was the written and practical test with future co-workers, Fred Rensby and Scott Gagnon. So the written test was just basic electronics, and the practical exam was troubleshooting a failed transceiver, and boy was that thing ancient. It was far older than stuff that I was used to seeing in the Coast Guard. Coast Guard was a lot more advanced in that area. So while I'm sitting in the shop working on the practical testing, Scott Gagnon happened to walk through the shop, grabbed Fred Rensby's. They walked out into the bucket truck bay, and as the door was closing into the bucket truck bay, I heard Scott Gagnon say to Fred, "This is our guy." So formal interviewing process the week before, interviewed everybody, and it turns out that I'm the one who the position was offered. And I have the letter that was sent to me by the work group supervisor at the time, Jim Mitchell. I want to read it, at least part of it. So this is dated March 10th, 1998. Dear Donovan, this letter is to confirm the verbal agreement we reached on March 4th, 1998 regarding my offer of employment and your acceptance of the position of Electronic Technician 2 for the city of Corvallis, Oregon. Your starting date will be April 20th, 1998. April 20th, 1998. You will be scheduled for an orientation session, at which time you will be provided with an employee handbook and safety manual. Please plan to review and familiarize yourself with both manuals and return the form indicating that you have read them. Your starting salary will be $16.0420 per hour, $16.04. If the city manager approves any across-the-board increases for all AWC employees, you will be entitled to it. Every new employee appointed to a regular position with the city must serve a probationary period. Your probationary period will be a minimum of 6 to a maximum of 12 months. Your first formal performance appraisal will be October 20th, 1998. Your benefits will be the same as granted to all AWC employees. You will receive a benefit summary at the time of your employee orientation. Okay, so my employee orientation was interesting, and I'll get to that in another video, but not this one. Let's look at what it says here, that at my orientation process, which was approximately 45 days after I started, employee handbook and safety manual. The employee handbook and safety manual, the very first one, was created on September of 2001. That's 3 years after this letter. Why write something that's not true into a formal job offer? And so when the employee handbook came out, I just want to read the first 2 sentences and the last 3 sentences of the first paragraph so you kind of get an understanding of what I found myself in. Welcome to the city of Corvallis. The city of Corvallis considers its employees to be its most valuable resource and essential for providing exemplary customer service. Neither this handbook nor any other city document confers contractual right, either expressed or implied, to remain in the city's employ. Nor does it guarantee any fixed term and condition of your employment. Your employment is not for any specific time and may be terminated at will, with or without prior notice, by the city, or you may resign for any reason at any time. So, after I arrived here, I met an employee by the name of Bob Fenner, and he had a saying, because I'm going to give credit where credit's due for all of this, okay? I'm not hiding any of it. The things that I screw up, I'm going to talk about as well. So Bob Fenner's saying was, there's the right way to do a job, there's a wrong way of doing a job, and then there's the city's way of doing the job, which is generally worse than the wrong way. I really wished that Fred Rinsby and Scott Gagnon would have pulled me aside to tell me what it was really like to being an employee with the city of Corvallis, because certain individuals are looking at internet pornography. Certain individuals are getting caught having sex with the manager of their department. Some employees are caught in their office masturbating to felony level pornography that's mandatory reporter. So that person's a PDF file. I'm not sure what I can or can't say that YouTube is going to strike as fair use, free speech. So after employment with 3 different city managers, let's see, Neil Mann was the public works director when I got there, Steve Rogers, then Mary Steckel, and then finally Jeff Blaine. Supervisors, Jim Mitchell, Jerry Smith, before Som it was, I'm going to forget her name. All of a sudden it just pops out of my head. Robin Bassett, then Som Sortnerok, and then Greg Gesher. And what I learned, you know, it was like living at home with mom and dad. I was waiting to get out of that hostile, dysfunctional, broken environment with parents to find out the city basically operates itself in a very similar manner. And the definition that best suits it is a Machiavellian government. They use lying, manipulation, alienation, and subjugation by selfish, greedy, lazy, and incompetent management. So, I got to learn this backwards, this pay-to-fail business model. Mr. Nelson, there's an interesting story for his exit from the city. Jim Patterson is also, Mr. Patterson is interesting how he arrived there and how he conducted himself while he was there and then leaving. And Mr. Shepard's just and for me is an entirely different kettle of fish as far as I had more interaction with him than I did any of the other ones. So the city the city government has been financially failing the residents of Corvallis since before I arrived there back in 1998. I had no idea how this general fund thing worked. I would learn in that time how it worked. And I believe that what's going on here is just a direct fraud to the community, where a consultant was hired to show the city manager and the city council how to manipulate the city's general fund budget, giving all of the money to emergency services, which would be police and fire, and then taking them away from social services and then threatening to close those services down, rather than having a plan and budgeting money for projects across the board for emergency services, police and fire, and social services, library, community center, aquatic center, parks and recreation. Instead of having a plan and budgeting appropriately, let's just reallocate all of the money, for the most part, giving it to police and fire and stopping it from anything happening with the social services. And then put out flyers, like this here, measure 2141, stating how they're going to reduce your services, close them down. So after the treatment that I received from, and I'll just go ahead and read my resignation letter and we'll make it simple. This is dated Tuesday, November 15th, 2022. I'm resigning from the position with the City of Corvallis Public Works Department effective Friday, December 2nd. I'm resigning due to an overall toxic working environment spanning 24 years. I documented the lying, manipulation, alienation, and subjugation as a resident and employee of the community's government, beginning with my interviewing process on March 4th, 1998. I'm resigning because of the following people and the toxic working environment they created in my time with the city: Jim Mitchell, Mary Steckel, Steve Rogers, John Nelson, Jim Patterson, Mary Beth Altman-Hughes, John Sassaman, Mark Shepard, Chris Kelly, Gabe Cogswell, and Greg Gesher. They treat people in ways they themselves would not want to be treated. They know what they are doing is wrong, and they do it anyway. To quote Chris Kelly, because we can. I'm resigning due to a career of no advancement opportunities, mindless repetitive menial labor, digestive issues, and back pain created by the working environment. Being an employee at the City of Corvallis is a learning experience of the human condition and how people with poor character development should not be allowed into leadership roles. Mental and emotional immaturity and professional misconduct do not make good leaders. Being employed here is like being a character in The Lord of the Flies, with the exception the children look like adults. On February 22nd, 2018, February 22nd, 2018, February 26th, 2018, and March 29th, 2018, Mary Beth Altman-Hughes, John Sassaman, and Mark Shepard would show me exactly what Jim Mitchell meant when he told me in the employee orientation process: we do things here a certain way, don't question it. They sent law enforcement to my home to harass and intimidate me, falsified paperwork against me, and then threatened to terminate my employment if I did not comply with their ways of doing business. For the 14 years that I was employed with Jim Mitchell, city management knowingly and willingly let him use his office and computer network to view and masturbate himself to felony level pornography that's mandatory reporter. He's a PDF file. My statements are not meant to impugn anyone. I'm not mad at anyone. I wish all of you well and hope that you finally grow up, move beyond the sophisticated moron stage of life, and become rational thinking, civilized adults that treat others the way you like and want to be treated. Now, I've kept all of my paperwork. I kept all of it from the Coast Guard, all my leave and earning statements, everything from, like I read earlier, the card that I was given as from the Coast Guard when I enlisted. I kept 24 years of paperwork with the city, all of my evaluations, all of it. I intend to show exactly how I became a burned out anhedonic misanthrope. Burnout is generally, most everyone understands that. That is mental, emotional, and physical exhaustion due to repeating the same processes, expecting different results. Einstein's definition of insanity. It leads to depression. And then if it goes on long enough, anhedonia sets in. And for those who may not know the word anhedonic or anhedonia, it means that a person no longer finds any joy in what they do in their life. So every project, everything is just an absolute dread, and there's just no reward. It doesn't feel good anymore. And then finally, the misanthrope. After the years of, growing up with the mother and father that I knew and waiting for 10 years to get out of that environment from age 7 to 17, and then falling right back in that environment when I married the wrong person, and her backwards way of thinking is what found this job and led me here. And it all boils down to betrayal. That's what I learned. Lying and manipulation is fraud. Alienation and subjugation is bullying. And that's how I got here. And the problem is I can't get away from it. It's by not trying to solve the problem, which means treating the cause instead of the symptoms. I can treat the symptoms however I want. I can treat them, and I've done this. I can treat them with alcohol. I can treat them with a drug. I can treat them with a drug and alcohol. Those are unhealthy coping skills. I also worked out a lot during this time. I mean, I have the proof of it as well. I used to ride a bicycle to the tune of 1,000 miles a year to and from work. I have more than 12,000 miles logged on 3 different bicycles. So ultimately, what I'm trying to do is help anybody else who may get to this place in life. I hope I can help solve these issues before anybody else ever gets to this place. Because I am in a place where I don't trust people anymore. It makes it very difficult to go anywhere, to do anything, to have any type of relationship with another human being, because I'm tired of them lying to me. I'm tired of their fraud. And all I've tried to do is help people. I don't understand it. Well, I mean, I've come to the understanding of it. So anyway, let's get this video done. The next video will be solve the enigma. Solving the issues. How are we going to do this? When I ask, in comparing and contrasting, because this was an outstanding, excellent employer, not perfect by any means. When people got in trouble here, the UCMJ, they had to deal with it. And I have plenty of stories about officers and enlisted both finding themselves in issues and how it was handled appropriately. Here, it's handled through selective application of rules, laws, that type of thing, and who likes who. It's nothing like this. So anyway, the next video will be solve the enigma. How do we determine, how do we answer the question, are we civilized? Because I see this one a lot more civilized than this over here. Seems to me as though it's lie to and manipulate the resident of Corvallis farther and farther into tax debt, as you can see here. 3 different city managers. We do things here a certain way. Don't question it. So the next video, I keep repeating myself, solve the enigma. Thank you for viewing, and I really, truly hope that you have a wonderful day. And remember, treat other people the way you like and want to be treated. Or a different way of saying it, if you don't want something done to you, don't do it to somebody else. It'll certainly solve a lot of our problems. Such a simple way of living. Okay, thanks a lot for stopping by. I hope you have a great day.